in the Bible it says that we are by default driven to evil.
Why would our conscience damn us as being wicked?
It's important to be prepared for catastrophe. Your life can be uprooted in an instant.
In walking with God, you will be prepared for these types of things because you have been reflecting and questioning.
They can happen just like that. Life is fickle.
It's interesting that it happened during COVID, and like my phone starts recording in my pocket and then it cuts. All of a sudden you just hear
Okay, so we're good to go?
fuck.
I think we're finally good to go. It only took an hour and 40 minutes of preparation this week.
We'll cut that down to an hour and 35 next week.
Yeah.
Well,
incrementally.
Welcome back to Biblecast.
Welcome back, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Intended meaning. I'm exhausted. Take this intro because I'm fucking tired from that shit.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Noah and the flood. Jack is a little bit tired because we're setting up the new studio and we're having a lot of technical difficulties today.
Yeah,
So we're going to get that nailed down in the future, but we're all good now. We're up and running.
Just to prepare everyone, that fucking light, I guarantee, is going to shut off at some point. I guarantee it's going to shut off.
Probably.
So we're going to have some different lighting in this fucking episode.
Yeah, and at some point I wouldn't be surprised if one of the curtains fell too.
Yeah. So that's good.
Well, how have you been doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Good.
Yeah, other than these technical difficulties, everything's going fine?
Yeah, everything's going really well, actually, in a professional level and personal level. And, yeah, so I went to this men's group last night where it's just, they kind of got together and they have a theme each meeting, and there's maybe 30 guys there. And they were talking about, how to be the best man, father, husband, teammate, and friend. Those were the 5 categories, and it was really interesting. So I'll hit you up next time I go to that because I think you might like it.
Yeah, no, that sounds nice. I like that. Yeah.
Cool. So getting I'm kind of really developing a good network's definitely not the right word. I'm really looking to develop a new set of friends that are all on the same page.
Close-knit circle rather than a network.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
What about you?
I can relate to that. Things are going good for me. I've just been up to the same stuff, work, exercise, taking care of the dog. Mm-hmm. Everything's going good. I've got no complaints at the moment. But let's get into the Bible chat. Cool. So today, like I said, we're going into Noah and the flood. I've got some notes here. So in between Cain and Abel and the flood, there's an entire chapter that's just Adam and his ancestors giving birth. Basically, it's just a whole page of Adam lived for this many years, and then he had this son, and then that son lived to be this old, and he had these sons. So we're not going to go over that because there isn't really any information other than birthing in that chapter. And if any of these people come up in the future, then we'll go back and we'll say this is this person's son. But I don't think we need to spend 30 minutes going over people living to be 900 and having babies. Yep. So, and that also, we've touched on this before, but all of the people mentioned in that chapter lived to be between the age of 365 and 962.
Okay.
So I don't know what that symbolizes. So basically, the way the story of the flood starts is humanity has started to populate the earth. They're all procreating. They are beautiful in the eyes of God. He says, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. So God at a certain point makes a decision to stop allowing people to live to be a millennia old.
Interesting.
Which, and I'm wondering how to interpret that from like an analytical standpoint. I'm wondering if that's just meant to emphasize that at a certain point your conscience will realize your time on this earth is limited. And I don't know if there's a more specific importance to that other than just recognizing like you have a limited amount of time here and you need to realize that fact if you're going to get the things done that you want to get done.
Interesting. Okay.
Probably not going to pronounce this correctly, but the Nephilim were also on earth in these days. And after, I believe some of them still existed after the flood. And are you familiar with the Nephilim?
I am not.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% clear on what those were whenever I first started reading this either. So they are mysterious beings in the Bible who are described as being large and strong. The Hebrew word for Nephilim directly translates to the fallen ones. So their origins aren't 100% understood. Some people have theorized that they're the descendants of fallen angels, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, yeah. The offspring of fallen angels and humans. That's the conclusion that some people have come to.
Okay.
So God eventually sees humanity as wicked and decides to destroy the human race. And it doesn't really go into a whole lot of detail as to why he sees this. It goes from God sees humanity as beautiful. God decides that he will not allow them to contend with him forever because they need to be mortal. The Nephilims exist. Humans are wicked and God wants to destroy them. It doesn't talk about what the humans are doing yet. It goes further into detail afterwards, but just right there, it sounds like I'm jumping ahead and skipping stuff. I'm not. No context is given before it says God sees humanity as wicked. So the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. So and I thought that was very interesting too. Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. I wish that it gave us more background as to why he would think that. What are they doing that makes it so that he believes all of their intentions are bad? All it says is that they've been procreating at this point. That's all it says. So Noah, however, finds favor in the eyes of the Lord because he is a righteous man who walks faithfully with God. So God, recognizing the corrupt state of humanity, tells Noah that he is going to put an end to all people. And he says, quote, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So God tells Noah to build an ark, and he is very specific about how he wants him to build this, down to the dimensions. He says, make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof of an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. So 1 cubit is roughly 18 inches or a foot and a half. So the ark is about 450 feet long by 75 feet wide. Okay. And a cubit back in the day was roughly the length of a forearm.
Gotcha.
So God tells Noah he is going to bring flood waters down upon the earth to, quote, destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it. God tells Noah to enter the ark as well as to bring his wife, his sons, and his sons' wives. He also tells Noah to bring 2 of every animal onto the ark, 1 male and 1 female. Not very PC, by the way. He also tells Noah to bring every kind of food that needs to be eaten onto the ark. So he is telling him to be very prepared. You're going to need food, buddy. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. Then he says, 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature that I have made. And that's something that I had forgotten from childhood, is that he didn't just tell him to bring 1 pair of every animal. He told him to bring 1 pair of the unclean animals and 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal. And I don't know what the distinction is. Are unclean animals the types of animals that you say can't eat if you're following the kosher diet, like anything with hooves.
Right.
Are those the unclean animals? I'm not 100% sure. And it doesn't clarify. So Noah did everything just as God told him to do. Then it rains for 40 days and 40 nights. And Noah is 600 years old at this point. That's not particularly important. I just put that in the notes because it mentioned it a couple of times. So the waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Every living thing that moved on land perished: birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left and those with him in the ark. And the waters flooded the earth for 150 days. So it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but the waters stayed around for roughly 150 days afterwards. Then God remembers Noah and stops the rain. And the Bible specifically said he remembers them. So I don't know if he forgot about this one guy that he told to survive the flood. But so God, quote, remembers Noah and stops the rain. And then after 150 days, it receded. On the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. So we're starting to make progress. The mountains, like we said, were covered over 15 cubits. Now we can see them again. After 40 days, Noah sent out a raven, which flew back and forth until all the water dried up. Then he sent out a dove to see if the ground was dry, but it wasn't. After 7 days, he sent the dove back out, and it returned with a freshly plucked olive leaf, so Noah knew that the water had receded. Then he waited 7 more days and sent the dove out again, but this time it didn't return. So I guess at that point, that's when he realized, okay, it's actually viable for us to live on the earth again now. So God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it." Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all of the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood, and never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done."
Can you repeat that line again?
Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood, and never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. And I thought that was really interesting too, because it's almost like in the eyes of God, we are inherently evil, not neutral, not a blank slate. We are inherently driven towards wickedness, which I guess would explain why Old Testament God is such a dick sometimes, but it just seems pessimistic. It's interesting, though. I made a note of that. Like, is mankind inherently evil in the eyes of God? And then he says, as long as earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. So then God blessed Noah and his sons, and he said, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth and all of the birds in the sky and on every creature that moves along the ground, on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything, but you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. And for your lifeblood, I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal and from each human being too. I will demand an accounting for the life of another human being." So basically, God wants you to be vegan.
Yeah.
No, but so that kind of makes me think, well, actually, I'll read this next line. "Whoever sheds human blood by humans shall their blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made mankind." I wonder if that's almost an eye for an eye inclination.
Live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm kind of just wondering why that's coming up right now. It doesn't seem relevant to the current situation. I mean, he did see man as being wicked, so maybe that was part of it, and this is just kind of alluding to that, like people were killing each other. So now he's saying that, if you kill somebody, you are doomed to be killed by somebody else, almost as comeuppance. So that's also a little bit interesting. But then he says, as for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the earth and increase upon it. Then he says, I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you. A covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth, and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on earth. So God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on earth. So, start to finish, God floods the earth, tells Noah to save himself, his family, and at least one pair of every kind of animal, more for certain animals. Then whenever the flood stops, Noah makes sacrifices to God, and then God says, I'm never going to do this again. That is my covenant with you. I'm never going to wipe out all of humanity again. Just, quick abridgment. But anything in particular stand out to you? Any initial thoughts on specific parts or on the story as a whole?
Definitely. So as he so it does say he walks with God, is that right? At a certain point? Well, so today I was going on a walk and I had my headphones in and I was listening to music, and eventually I turned it off. I turned the music off just because I guess maybe I was thinking about this, I don't know, but like quite literally when you are walking with no outside noises or no outside stimulus, you are talking to yourself and you are questioning yourself. You are walking with God by our interpretation. I think it's important to note that, because to say that Noah was walking with God, it's like despite the wickedness in the world at the time, Noah was reflecting and Noah was wondering, like, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to be doing to prepare for a proper life? And so the ark could then symbolize Noah built, and this is what Jordan Peterson says a lot, Noah built the foundation. Like the ark is, Noah was prepared for the flood coming. And in walking with God, you will be prepared for these types of things because you have been reflecting and questioning. And that's kind of what immediately sticks out to me.
Yeah, and I would agree with that completely. I think that the overall meaning behind the story is just that it's important to be prepared for catastrophe, which is essentially what I think the flood symbolizes.
Yes.
Is just general catastrophe. Your life can be uprooted in an instant. And if you aren't just listening to your conscience and making an active effort to be prepared for that kind of travesty and uprooting of your life, you can be absolutely wiped out by it. Maybe not literally, you're not going to be drowned by a flood if, you lose your job, but you can absolutely just lose yourself and become a much worse version of yourself. Or if you do say lose your job and you weren't prepared for something like that, you can become homeless, for example, just as a specific example of one way that you might lose your life. I mean, you certainly have lost the life that you had grown accustomed to, and you're now living a new life. So yeah, absolutely, because Noah was walking with God, he was familiar with his conscience and walking with it forthrightly. He was told how to prepare for this catastrophe because he was just allowing his conscience to give him that instruction. Yeah.
The next thing that sticks out to me is and I totally can get behind what you just said. Next thing that sticks out to me is even from childhood. They are wicked from childhood. And there's a contrast there because Jesus says in order to enter the kingdom, you should be childlike. The kingdom of heaven, you should be childlike. I'm starting to think because a baby, an infant, can't feel any of the 7 deadly sins. But as soon as you're capable of feeling those, like even at maybe 5 years old, like someone has a toy that you want, and
Yeah.
then you want that toy. Like, now you are starting to be capable of being wicked in a sense, and maybe wicked is the all-encompassing word for all of the seven deadly sins. I'm not totally sure about that.
Could be. Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good word to use for it.
Wicked.
For now. Yeah, just if you are experiencing those feelings and indulging in them, you could say that you're being wicked to a certain extent.
Right. So I think, yeah, we see a lot of themes of consciousness. We see themes of consciousness in Adam and Eve. Now in this, of talking about even from childhood, starting to, like you were saying, like we are determined to be wicked from our conception. And we're capable of being wicked once we have those abilities to feel envy or wrath or gluttony or whatever it may be. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it is really interesting to me, especially because, yet, like you said, Jesus said that in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, you do need to be childlike. But even still, Old Testament God recognized that humans are wicked from birth, from childhood, which, again, I just find it really interesting that in the Bible it says that we are not by default neutral vessels. We are by default driven to evil, which maybe there's something in that about the fact that you really do need to acknowledge God, your conscience, if you want to veer away from those just wicked or evil or just generally negative inclinations that might befall anybody if they don't make an active attempt to stay away from that. You know, because if you're not paying attention to your conscience, you might just not know any better. Right? Like if you aren't listening to that little voice in your head that tells you when you're doing something right or when you're doing something wrong, there's nothing that would guide you to avoid that kind of negative behavior.
Right.
So I guess I can kind of see how maybe self-consciousness would start to come into play there in terms of your ability to avoid that wicked inclination.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So
another, if you don't mind me bringing it up, like, is there a high power that said, "God damn it, these people are wicked. Let's flood them." Right? No, but why does our, if we, in the theme of God being our conscience, principle on a good in the positive sense, highest moral compass, why would our conscience damn us as being wicked, as all humans being wicked?
Do you mean why would they recognize it? Why would your conscience recognize all people as being wicked, or why would it enact the flood?
Why would it recognize all people being wicked?
Maybe as a safety mechanism. You know, it kind of like whenever we were talking about the crucifixion and original sin, and we were talking about just recognizing the fact that original sin is kind of like your innate ability to be cruel and awful if you don't make it a point to not be that way. Maybe your conscience just may recognize that fact at some point. I mean, I can think of a time when I was just kind of starting to get my shit together, where I started maybe being a little bit too pessimistic about human nature, generally speaking. And eventually that leveled out to a point where I stopped just kind of seeing everybody as being potential. Well, I stopped seeing everybody as being hostile and started seeing everybody as having the potential to be hostile. So it's maybe it is literally just talking about your conscience being important, or allowing your conscience to guide you will make you realize that other people have that capability for cruelty and might like screw you over.
I'd also bring it back to the conscience recognizing it in ourselves. Like, no matter how good you are, no matter the purest person that we know, they have felt some sort of wicked thought at some point. Not that they acted on it, but like we are all going to experience these thoughts and these a wicked nature of some sense. Not that we act on them, but in experiencing them, the fact that that's inevitable, we are all wicked in a sense.
Sure. You mean just because we have that capability for it?
Just like someone, like at any point in our life, someone is going to feel a wicked thought. Even the most perfect person that's alive right now, the sweetest, kindest person, they're going to experience some wicked thought. Like, it is impossible for humans not to experience that thought, at least.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. I think then that's kind of where God recognizing that we are innately wicked.
Sure. Yeah. And that could be, yeah. And yeah, I think that brings it back to the, just what that brings it back to what we were saying earlier about how, yeah, inherently we do all have that capability to be that way. And everybody has experienced some sort of, we'll say, wicked, negative, malicious thought or idea at some point. That doesn't mean that you are doomed to be bad forever, but it certainly does mean that you have the capacity to be that way, and that it's important to recognize that and make it a point not to behave that way, even if you do have those thoughts and inclinations.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Anything else on this? Because I'll get into the dreams of the flood, if not. No, really, I don't know if there's anything else in particular that stands out to me within the story. Really just the main takeaway is what I want to emphasize again, is just that it's important to be prepared for travesty. And there is great utility in being prepared for that, which is where I think your conscience comes into play, because our interpretation of God or whatever, I think generally speaking, your conscience is only really telling you to do productive things. I don't think that it's not healthy to be paranoid about the potential for travesty, like expecting it to occur at any moment and just like constantly looking over your shoulder as if somebody's about to literally stab you in the back. But I suffer from that too. I genuinely.
I have in the past for sure, but it is perfectly reasonable to just recognize the fact that is a possibility. Somebody might do you wrong, or just some it might not even be somebody doing you wrong. It might just be life happens to you. You lose your job. You lose a loved one. You get cancer. Whatever it may be, you need to be prepared for these kinds of things. And that doesn't mean constantly being in a state of worry about these things potentially happening, but you do need to be prepared. What are you going to do if you lose your job? You need to know what the answer to that question is. What are you going to do if you come down with a horrible illness? Like, you need to be prepared for these things, because they can happen just like that. Life is fickle. Like we've said before, things can change in an instant. And I think that's a very important message, just generally speaking, not, completely removed from the Bible. That's just an important fact to recognize. Like, you need to be prepared, because shit can get turned upside down very quickly. And if you're not prepared for it, you will spiral. And I speaking from experience, if something terrible happens to you that you are just absolutely not ready for, it is devastating. It can be truly, truly devastating, not just from an emotional standpoint, but to your ability to just act in the world and go about your daily business that you need to go about in order to maintain productivity. If you're not prepared for these little or big things that might happen to you to just kind of fuck up your routine and make life more difficult than it currently is, that lack of preparedness is going to be much more harmful to you than recognizing the fact that these things can happen and just having that in the back of your mind. Not thinking about it constantly, but just recognizing the fact that things can go wrong and you need to be ready for that.
And quite literally, when those things, if you are not prepared for them, you will be submerged in suffering.
Almost.
It'll surround you, and you will be, almost as if you were flooded. Right?
Almost, yeah, it's almost like you're drowning in
right.
in the chaos of your new situation, and you just don't know how to get out. So yeah, and I think that a flood is, in that regard, a really good analogy for whenever life just throws you one of those curveballs and totally screws everything up. And I don't know if this story specifically relates to you causing that kind of thing to happen. It might just be about random tragedy, because the story is specifically about Noah, and it says Noah's doing everything he should be doing. That's why God helps him prepare. So I don't think that this story is talking about whenever you screw things up, you need to be ready to like rectify that. I think it is strictly about just being prepared for how random life can be, and how important it is to just stay on the right path if you want to be prepared for that kind of just chaotic tragedy that can befall anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
definitely.
let's get into your flood dream.
Cool. So,
explain the situation.
cool. And then we'll just we don't have to listen to it here, but we can.
Well, let's listen to it, and then just because I want to hear it
Okay.
again. But either way, I want you to send me the file so that I can actually put it directly into the video. But I do want to hear it again because it is creepy as hell.
Yeah. So this is in 2020. And around this time that this video happens, so there was a recording in my pocket, and around this time, I'm having like multiple dreams of drowning. You know, a noticeable amount of dreams where I'm drowning, to where it was noticeable over any other dreams I was having.
And has that ever happened before or after?
Nope.
What about not with like drowning specifically, but just any kind of recurring nightmare? Or what,
yeah.
Would you have considered it a nightmare?
Yes, I would have considered it a
Okay.
nightmare. Definitely recurring. Definitely yes, but I couldn't bring any to mind immediately. But
None as profound as this one, I guess.
Definitely. So
Voice keeps fucking cracking.
okay, so this is November 2020. What time did the lockdowns of COVID start?
I can't remember if it was early 2020 or early 2021. I feel like,
Let's see.
was it 2020? It was 2020 because it was right before the elections.
I'm gonna look up when did the lockdown start in the United States?
I think it was March of 20.
Yep.
Because it happened right before St. Patrick's Day and shut down the parade, and I was pissed.
Yep.
Like, the one time a year I actually want to go out and do shit. The one fucking time.
So yeah, so we had been in COVID for a few months at this point, and I am over at your house. So I'm having these dreams of being drowned, multiple dreams, waves
Yeah.
waves crashing, whatever.
Do you remember specific details about the dreams?
No, I wouldn't be able to. I just know that it was prominent that I was drowning.
You're just drowning, like, out in an ocean, or like...
Multiple different, maybe sometimes in a house, maybe sometimes in an ocean, but multiple different settings where I was drowning. Okay, and so what we're about to play is I'm over at your house. Okay, this video goes on for 22 minutes, and then that's important to note. It goes on for 22 minutes, and I'm over at your house, and we're chatting. My phone starts recording in my pocket, and so for like the first couple of seconds, you can hear us talking, and then it cuts, and then all of a sudden you just hear these ocean-like noises. I mean, it's fucking bizarre.
Yeah.
And at certain points, you hear like almost demon voices. Like it's so bizarre.
That part I don't remember. Okay, now I'm even more looking forward to it.
Sweet. Okay. So with that context, we'll play this, and then we'll get into it. And then I'm going to pause that for a second, so we'll come back in. And then I will play this here. But so anyway, the video was 22 minutes long. It went on for 22 minutes, right? Now, when you go and look at the video on my phone in my album, it says the video is 3 minutes and 54 seconds. Okay? Now, if you look up, would you mind looking up Bible verse 3:54, 3:54? You don't have to type anything else. This is what it says on my phone, even though the video is 22 minutes.
The waters closed over my head, and I thought I was about to perish. Yeah.
That's
fucking creepy.
It's so creepy. Because it was a 22-minute video. Why would it fucking say 3:54? Why would I be having dreams of drowning? And then why would these fucking noises be showing up throughout this entire fucking video?
And is this recording, it is actually 22 minutes long, right?
Yeah.
Like it is a 22-minute long video when you
yes.
open up the file.
Yep. And I'll do a screenshot or whatever so that you can even put this in the video.
Yeah, and I don't want to assume like what your belief on that is, but my immediate inclination is not that like this is some sort of biblical message from God imposing his will on Jack's phone.
Right.
But no, that it's extremely strange, and I don't really believe in that kind of thing where like some sort of higher power is interfering with anything and like sending us messages. But I have some kind of, I guess, more woo-woo beliefs where, you know,
energy.
I'm
with you.
Energy and just weird, like having weird feelings right before something bad is about to happen, or even having dreams about something specific right before something specific happens. I do think that there's something to that, and I think a big part of that is from my dad, because he is, you know, my dad, he's a very rational guy, you know, he just very straightforward, not, I don't mean this in a political way, but just generally conservative, you know, just literally conservative. He kind of believes in that kind of thing where he, you know, he's told me before, like, I've got a bad feeling about X situation. And then like, he's never wrong. He's never fucking wrong. I swear to God, we must have some sort of gypsy blood on our Irish side. But no, I just wanted to preface that. Like, I don't think that this is some sort of weird biblical thing, but I just think it's weird. I do think it's very weird, and I don't know where else to go from there. It's strange. I don't think it's just some sort of weird coincidence. I don't know what the hell it is.
I don't know what to make of it. It's interesting that it happened during COVID and like
while everything was in absolute fucking chaos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, well, do you want to listen to this upstairs on the speaker, and then we can wrap the show up here?
Do you think the speaker's necessary?
I think it's worth going on the speaker, quite honestly.
Yeah, let's pause all the recording.
Just so blank.
Who does this?
John Paul.
John Paul.
But
We'll use this as a trash bag.
Cases
One
of
mini
trash
bag.
Do we have a slightly bigger piece of trash that we can use to put in that side?
grandfather now.
Oh my goodness, maybe we do.
Good point. Yeah, I was thinking
Like
we
the
were
guy from
gonna be
SpongeBob that sell when they're trying to sell chocolate.
Yeah.
and that Robert was gonna be.
You're nobody if you don't have a bag holding that.
Yeah. Not a Halloween movie?
No, because they recreate Thanksgiving in the movie
Oh.
when they go to camp.
Well, that's nice. I don't think I've ever seen The Addams Family.
Get out.
Love you.
Nope.
We'll watch it. It's fine.
We can watch it as an interlude, Star
I've
Wars.
never seen the movie. I'm sorry. I used to watch the show.
It's good.
The day after Thanksgiving, I guess I was in high school or college.
All right. Well, we just listened to it, and that's beyond bizarre. A lot of the noises in there, I have no explanation for. The initial high-pitched stuff, like that just kind of sounds like paper rustling together, I understand, but some of it sounds like a slowed and reverbed, like, diesel engine.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, I know you weren't driving a goddamn garbage truck.
Right,
you know?
right.
So I have no idea where any of that came from. And some of those noises, they sound like leviathans.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like a weird undersea recording of like, we caught this weird audio wave and we don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like you're in a submarine almost, and like
Yeah. Yeah, like
Submerged.
some of the noises that I heard almost reminded me of the sounds that you might hear if you were like in a ship that was on rocking waters, like if you were just below deck and hearing all of the like creaking metal of
Yeah.
of the, I don't know what you would call it, not the foundation, but the hull just kind of warping a little bit with the water, you know, the sound of that metal moving around a little bit. Yeah, it's weird as hell.
fucking bizarre.
Yeah, and then after 20 minutes of weirdness, it just snaps right back to normal.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can hear us just chatting. You can hear my dog click-clacking around on the floor. Bizarre. I don't have another word for it. It's fucking weird.
Yeah. And the fact that if you look up the Bible verse, the fact that to me the most bizarre thing of it all is the fact that it's a 22-minute long video. It says 3 minutes and 54 seconds on the thumbnail, essentially. And that verse is about being submerged by water.
Yeah, truly strange. Extremely. And yeah, I have no idea what to make of that. But
Yeah.
I thought while we were up there, I thought of an example of just like energy being put out into the world by events that you feel for whatever reason. I remember the day that Chester Bennington died, my favorite musician at all time, bar none. The day he died, I woke up feeling like death. Not sick, but just horribly, horribly depressed. And I deal with clinical depression. Like it's a thing that I was initially diagnosed with when I was 10. So I've had similar feelings before, but that was to the point where I didn't want to get out of bed. And I didn't know he had died. Like I didn't wake up, read the news, and get depressed. I just woke up like feeling terrible to the point where I had to call into work. I had never called into work because of depression before that. And like 2 hours into the day, my mom, you know, called me or texted me and was just like, "Hey, did you hear that Chester Bennington died?" And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." So that just kind of, it made me think of that because I couldn't think of an example earlier whenever we were just talking about having those weird feelings
Yeah.
that relate to something that you have no idea about. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I related.
Yeah, that's like that sixth sense of the Holy Spirit, maybe. You know?
Yeah, right. That maybe that's part of the Holy Spirit that we're still struggling to figure
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
But it was just very, very strange to me that I woke up just feeling so shitty
Yeah.
that day for seemingly no reason whatsoever. There
Right,
nothing
right.
abnormal had happened the day before. Everything was just business as usual. Just woke up feeling like shit. Happened to be on the day of happened to be on the day that a celebrity died, and it was like the only celebrity that I would give a shit about dying. Like I don't get that way about like
Yeah,
the people that I even the people that I seriously idolize, you know, like if Conor McGregor were to die tomorrow, it would just be like, man, that is wild. But I wouldn't be depressed about it. I wouldn't be like crying about it. And I didn't think that I would feel that way about Chester Bennington either. Although he was a lot more influential. I wouldn't even say influential, just a big part of getting me through difficult times, I guess.
Yeah, and like there's a difference between like the motivation that Conor McGregor might bring and like the something that music does to you.
Yeah. Whereas Conor McGregor was, like you said, more of a source of inspiration for me. Just, seeing how dedicated he was to his craft in the very beginning. He's kind of strayed away from that now, and that is kind of depressing.
Yeah.
But in the very beginning, just hearing him talk about like how passionate he was for the sport and how that motivated him to work as hard as he did, like that meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
But that's different than what like Linkin Park's music has done for me in times of strife. Like just listening to music that you feel deeply connected to, and that you can just relate to in your terrible situations, and something about that just picks you up a little bit. It's like you're not suffering alone. Even these wildly successful people are still just dealing with this shit. Like you said, there's just something a little bit different about that. But yeah, that was very bizarre to me. Yeah.
I never like this. It took me a while to like get into that, like even the screaming aspect of music.
Yeah, I remember you initially weren't really a fan of their music at all, and when you first started to become a fan of their music, you were much more into their newer, less angry sounding music. And then eventually you like got more into, like Hybrid Theory and Meteora.
Yeah.
Not to speak for you, it's just that was what I remember of
Gotcha.
your fandom.
Well, once when he killed himself, I'm like, oh, that's what that screaming was.
That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, I guess that was eye-opening to me to a certain extent, because it's like I knew that he had experienced suffering. I knew that he had a traumatic childhood, and that he dealt with drug addiction, and that that takes a toll on you long term. Even if you're past that part of your life, there's just always it still exists in your mind. You can't just eliminate these memories, and certain things are damaging to you long term. Just beyond the immediate effects of being addicted to something like meth. The experiences that you endure during that period of addiction can just stick with you. If you were, say, doing things that, I don't know, your conscience would now tell you like that is horrible that you did that, or if you think of doing something like that, your conscience would say don't do that because that would be horrible. That can take a serious toll on you. Or like he dealt with sexual abuse as a child. That's permanently damaging.
Yep.
No matter who it happens to.
Yep.
There is a certain level of just violation that comes with that I can't personally speak on what it's like to feel that, but just from what I have observed, it seems like there is a certain level of damage that comes with that just cannot be repaired. And yeah, like you said, that's where that screaming came from. That was the pain that he was vocalizing. Yeah.
Well, do you want to wrap up Noah's Ark there?
I think we can wrap up Noah's Ark there. Yeah. Ultimately, just to go over my biggest takeaway from that story is just be prepared for tragedy.
Yep.
You have to be ready for tragedy, because it can happen to you at any time. You don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So just be ready. And I think that's about as specific as you can get about that. It's not about preparing for anything in particular. It's just about having your bases covered in case some sort of tragedy happens to you. And just being ready to, I guess it's just about being ready to be strong enough to deal with that sometimes. It might not be as specific as preparing for like losing your job. I keep saying that example, but that's why I bring it up again. You might not have to prepare for something like that specifically. It's just about remaining vigilant and capable of dealing with whatever curveball life may throw at you, whether it's a flood or a death, whatever it may be. You need to be ready.
Yep. And I'd say embrace silence and embrace walking with God, in the sense of preparing for those things. Be reflecting constantly.
Yeah, pay attention to your conscience. If you're slacking off, there's some part of your brain that is going to be telling you about that. And
Right.
slacking off is, I would say, akin in some sense to just a lack of preparedness.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Well, thanks for watching episode 5?
Six, I believe. This will be 6. We just uploaded 4. 5 is on the backlog for next week.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
All
Well,
right. Thanks,
yeah.
guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Cool.